Continuing reading. They had begun by asserting control over the physical premises. It spread then to their control over transportation. We could not go anywhere without their taxi service. Then the phone lines went down. I knew they could still call out because when I went into their office, they were on the phone. When I asked about it, they said it was only a local in-house call. They took charge of all money collections. When I asked for an accounting, they said the reports will not be ready for a couple of days. No more discussion was allowed. When I asked for an accounting of the food, no information was available. It was not until 2 months later, when I received a phone call from a woman who had coordinated the event, that I realized they had bankrupted the organization by not returning any of the money or paying any of the expenses. The holodynamic coordinator, a woman from Russia, had to flee the country under threats of death. All information given in the conference was facilitated and changed. I can look back on it now and remember little things that didn't take on significance until later, such as when their translator came to me asking for clarification in my speech. I asked her why she wanted it, and she told me she was rewriting it for distribution. At the time, I took back all of the materials she had, and I let her know I refused to have anything to do with people who rewrite my materials. I can see now how the agents with control of information could spread rumors and plant misinformation throughout the conference. It is apparent now that this well-organized sabotage effort continued for several years. Of the 250 holodynamic leaders who attended the Dumnat conference, many had traveled thousands of miles and spent much of their meager savings. The rumors and blocking of any of the communication lines spread a great disillusionment over many of those at the conference. It was an overwhelming disappointment, and those who did not transform their holodynes got swept away from the program. What made this difficult to handle was what happened next. Prior to the conference, a volunteer group of holodynamics had been working with the Hospital for the Children of Chernobyl in Moscow. This multiple-block square, 5-story hospital building housed thousands of children who suffered from leukemia and other effects of the atomic explosion. A team of holodynamics were invited by some of the parents to help these children. In the process, they were able to heal a number of children using holodynamics. I remember Tamara, one of the team leaders, rushed up excited and radiant as she came home from her visit to the hospital. "Tamara," I said, "what are you so radiant about?" "Oh, Dr. Wolf," she beamed, "I have just watched a 2-year-old boy transform his leukemia." She reported on another amazing examples of healing that were taking place among the children in the hospital. Several weeks later, I asked her how things were going. She hung her head and reported that when the administration discovered the section they were working in was getting such high recovery rates, that they went to investigate. They immediately banished the holodynamics because, she said, we were ruining their statistics. I determined then and there to visit Chernobyl and teach families how to overcome their afflictions caused by the atomic radiation. So it was just after the conference in Dumna that I took the train down to Chernobyl area. After several weeks of work, I arranged to take the Trans-Siberian Railroad from city to city across the fallout zone through 10 time zones to the far east of Russia during the trip, which lasted 7 months. I became very ill. I am seldom ill, but my immune system was breaking down and I grew weaker and weaker. Each city I was greeted by large groups of people. The press had a field day, and on some occasions the schools would close and the children would come to talk with me. On one occasion each child brought a flower, and when they were gathered and presented to me, they filled the arms of 3 assistants. It was a great honor to be in the heart of people in the land I loved so totally. On the other hand, I was so ill by the time I reached Koborok, just a few miles from the east coast of Siberia, that I could not continue. The people around me discussed my plight and decided to fly me directly home to Hawaii. I was dying. Every move I made was a great effort. Most of the time I could only stand on my feet with physical help. It took a great deal of mental discipline to speak in front of a group. I remember it took 36 hours of airplanes and airports before I finally landed in Honolulu. After visiting several doctors, it became obvious that they could not find out what afflicted me. Kamala Everett took me into her home and began a series of treatment programs to see if we could revive my failing life systems. She lived just above Kauai, I can't pronounce that name, Bay, less than an hour south of Kona on the Big Island. Her home was beautiful, and its walls folded back to provide a full view of the forest and water immediately below. Finally, I remember a device that might be able to help. It was called an acupath, or an entero. And I had once helped train doctors in its proper use. It was a great diagnostic tool, and perhaps it could help find out what was killing me. We located Fred Lamb, a doctor in Honolulu, and arranged to fly over to see him. He hooked me up with the machine by using my acupuncture pressure points. The computer communicates with the body. "Don't tell me what is wrong," Dr. Lemon said as he hooked me up. As the readings started coming through, he first asked me, "Where did you get the beryllium?" Now I had handled a small beryllium disc while I was researching technology from the Technology of Science in Moscow. It was capable, the scientists claimed, of storing a terabyte of immediate recall information. No one knew I had handled that disc. "It's radioactive," he commented, "but it wouldn't hurt you." He turned back to his computer. Then he grasped, "Holy, look at this." I drew near the screen as he pointed to the graph. "Where did you get all this uranium?" I looked, but I was so weak I could hardly focus. "Here is the body of a 10-year-old, he continued. "This part indicates the body of a 20-year-old. See how it goes from 20, 40, 90, and 100 years old?" I nodded because it was clear. "Here is your body." He pointed above the scale. "You have very little time to live," he mumbled. "Your body is over 100 years old, and every cell of your body is under attack. Where did you get the uranium-238? His eyes were flaming with concern. I explained that I had been down to Chernobyl area working with people. He said, "I doubt you would have picked up this concentration just working with people." I assured him I had spent 7 months on the train across the entire fallout zone. He mumbled his doubt and asked me again how the concentration got so high. I could not tell him other than I was in the area. He shook his head, then proceeded to show me how every system in my body was at critical level. My immune system, liver, kidneys, heart, nervous system were about to collapse. I was now vulnerable to anything that comes along. He explained that I already had a couple of potential deadly viruses, but he explained, "This uranium is the real killer." He set about creating an antidote. He used a variety of homeopathic remedies and ordered a series of anti-radiation treatments out of Germany. As soon as I took even the medication he had in his office, a great weight lifted from my body. My mind began to work again, and so I combined these homeopathic treatments with my own internal processes. I addressed the information systems connected to the uranium and soon was on the mend. I never could figure out how I got all that uranium-238 into my system. I stayed with my friend Kamala Everett in her beautiful home for almost 2 years. This setting was about as radiation-free as anywhere on Earth. Even cell phones didn't work there. I swam with the dolphins, and as much as possible I healed. I couldn't travel, so I began to write. This is when I designed a new set of courses on wellness and began the text for this book, The Dance of Life. I wrote 5 manuals to go along with the text and the courses. I had to purchase a radiation screen because the computer set my body into a spin if I stayed too long in front of the screen. I could not go out into the sunlight, and in Hawaii that is just pure punishment because the weather is almost 100% sunshine. I persevered with the help of some wonderful friends and took care of me, prepared the best foods possible, nurtured me gradually back to health. I still couldn't figure out how I got all that uranium-238 inside my body. About a year later, I watched a television show on the BBC. It was a report from the defected KGB agent. He was showing how the KGB has assassinated more than half a dozen world leaders using almost invisible injections of uranium-238. I listened with rapid attention as they showed how it could be injected into the victim knowing it. On the television, without the victim knowing it. On the television, he showed an actual case where the target was shown coming across the bridge. Then it showed a KGB agent coming across the bridge from the other direction. He had an umbrella across his arm. As the agent passed the target, the agent reached down and touched the back of the target's leg with the end of an umbrella. The defector explained that the target was dead of unknown cases 6 months later. It was then that I realized what had happened to me. I had been targeted and injected with uranium. Almost immediately I knew when it had happened and who had done the deed. During the 6th International Conference on Holodynamics, after Agent Sun and his team had created such chaos, the very last thing he did was come up to me and give me a big Russian bear hug. As he did so, I felt a painful prick on my shoulder. Still in his embrace, I turned to look back to see what had pricked me, and he lambasted me back with a slap on the back exactly where the prick had occurred. As I turned back, his eyes reminded me of a lion who had small deer in his teeth. I slipped under his embrace and asked my full potential self to put a protective field around myself and soon forgot about it. It was well over 6 months before I could locate a doctor who knew how to diagnose the trouble. It took me almost 5 more years before I could correct the effects. My recovery process was not a simple affair. It took almost total dedication and discipline to maintain the process of recovery. It was hard on my body and hard on my heart. In 2001, I experienced a catalytic life-changing event. I suffered a stroke and literally died. It was in the middle of a 5-day advanced training sponsored by a Holodynamic Body Balancing Center in Aurora, near Toronto, Canada. By that time, I was sufficiently recovered so that I could teach a 5-day intensive course on wellness. A group of doctors, therapists, and healers had gathered to experience the program and participate in the relive, pre-live processes. We had spent 2 full days exploring, role-playing, and unfolding the transgenerational holodynes that control diseases so that we could transform them into wellness. We had organized into small groups of 6 members each, and at last we were ready to begin the processes. Just as the first relive process started, a woman came to me with one last clarification. As she talked with me, I found I could no longer keep my head up, so I sat down. As I put my hand up to hold my head, my arm could not stay erect. I had lost all power in my body. The woman had turned and I began to slip off the chair. I was falling to the floor when I was able to reach out and push a pillow from the chair next to me under my head as I hit the floor. At that moment I could feel a great pressure bearing down on my body. It felt as though I were hundreds of feet underwater. Then Sandy, who was my loving traveling companion, came into the room. She saw me, and I had enough power in my right hand to move my finger, signaling her to come over. She rushed to my side and, sitting down on the floor, placed my head in her lap. She put her hand on my heart. I could see her eyes grow wider. She explained later that my heart had stopped. As for me, I slipped into a great void of darkness. Now, fortunately, I had guided... I'm going to finish on another tape.